Hey everybody, today we're talking about trolls. No, not trolls from Central Park, not trolls from the movie Trolls, not trolls from World of Warcraft, though they're a little closer, little bit, to what I'll actually be talking about. But those are all very different to actual standard fantasy adventure trolls. We're going to throw those away, and we're going to talk about D&D trolls, / Warhammer trolls, and then Elder Scrolls trolls. Because these three do a pretty good job of covering the broad umbrella term that is a troll. So, broadly speaking, as I've already alluded to, there are two broad-ish categories of trolls with two subcategories underneath those. It is trolls that have intelligence and trolls that do not have intelligence, as in bestial trolls. Elder Scrolls trolls are bestial trolls. They're giant, angry animals. I would put them dumber than a gorilla, definitely. But maybe smarter than a big cat. I'm not sure on that one. It's... I don't know quite where you stick trolls. Trolls in Elder Scrolls are animal cunning, so probably not quite primate level. We'll go with that one. They're sub-primate, but they're definitely smart for an animal. Whereas D&D trolls and then Warhammer trolls, which are very similar to standard D&D trolls. I think they're actually one of the best examples, in my opinion, of what a D&D troll looks like in a fully fleshed out setting and actually being incorporated instead of just having side mentions somewhere. They're dumb, but they speak, they have a culture after a fashion, and they're big, durable, and terrifying. This also reminds me, I'm not talking about generally Lord of the Rings trolls, because they're Olog High are their own thing. I'll mention them later, but I'm going to put them off to the side for now because Tolkien is doing his own stuff with trolls. So, broad category. So, now that we've covered the broad categories of trolls, what makes up a troll? Well, they're always big. Always big. At least buff human size, if not bigger. Elder Scrolls trolls are a little on the short side, but they're also more like a gorilla than anything else. So trolls are huge, muscle-bound, tough, generally kind of dumb-ish, and almost always regenerate to some to some amount. How much this is depends, and that's sort of the second, and that's the subcategory. There is the, again, Elder Scrolls is the perfect example, trolls that just, you smack them and they'll regenerate, but you can, run a sword through their head and they die. Whereas, in the case of D&D / Warhammer trolls, which I will call super trolls, you are burning that corpse or that sucker's getting back up. So this gets us to the two most important aspects of a troll. Their weaknesses. There are two, acid and fire, and that is not necessarily true for all trolls. That this is questionable at best. Trolls are annoying. Now, this is not super far back. I cannot recall the story offhand, but it's a pulp sword and sorcery story that has, as far as I'm aware, is the origination of trolls die to acid and fire. Before that, trolls were more like ogres. They're really big, they're buff, they're kind of durable. Think Grendel. Grendel from Beowulf is probably a fair approximation of a troll, even if he's not an actual troll. He's a monster spawned of Cain or something like that. He's a big scary monster and Beowulf wrestles him and it's really cool. But he's sort of, you could say, a proto-troll in a manner of speaking. He's sort of what gives rise to trolls. So, trolls. They come in a wide variety of sizes, colors, consistencies, and levels of intelligence. You have stone trolls, mountain trolls, hill trolls, swamp trolls, river trolls, sea trolls, normal trolls, war trolls, and there might be a volcano troll. I mean, there's everything else for trolls, so you got a lot of variety to play with here. All of them have varying degrees of smart and stupid. This one is entirely setting dependent on which ones are smarter than other ones, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because they all share one thing in common. They're bigger than you, they're tougher than you, they're stronger than you, and they have claws that can rip your head off of your tiny little meat body and they're going to eat you. And that's true regardless of regenerating type. So I'm going to cover the more simplistic one first, the limited regeneration. Simple, overwhelming force. You run into these things, overwhelming force is the correct response. Not death by 1,000 cuts, because they healed 1,000 cuts. You want a gun, or a crossbow bolt, or, I mean, this is great. Nice big Dane axe, and, you know, legitimate strategy against large things. Hamstring it, and then behead it. Do so swiftly. That's how you'll beat the limited regenerators, because they can't regenerate having their head removed 99% of the time unless you put like the head back on, and that thing. So they're not too bad. They're just tougher, nastier ogres, or tougher, nastier gorillas, I suppose, would be an apt comparison. Now we go to the super regenerators. This is where it gets complex. I am not a mage. I don't know if you knew that. I am not a mage. This does not kill a troll. See this? This does not kill a troll. That does not kill a troll. Because, again, Warhammer and D&D, and many of their, basically anything derived from D&D trolls, has the same issue. Trolls do not die if you cut their head off. Their head will just grow a new body. Don't ask me where they're getting all that energy from. It's somewhere, but they will regenerate their entire freaking body. Honestly, there's some stories of them regenerating from a finger. Like, everything else is burned, but the finger's left, so... Don't ask me how that works. Don't ask me how it decides what part to regenerate from. I can't answer that question because I frankly don't know. Maybe this is how trolls reproduce. They just, like, rip an arm off, toss it out, and then the arm regenerates, and you get a whole new troll out of it. That's as viable as anything else, frankly. You know, they starfish it, as it were. But that opens up problems, because in a medieval context, or, hell, even an early Renaissance context, what do I do? Like, we haven't invented Molotovs yet, because gasoline isn't a thing. Now, you could make a firebomb out of, you know, some sort of highly flammable material. Vodka. Really high-proof vodka might work. But it's not really going to stick. So the best thing you could do is douse it in something flammable. Pitch. You know, if you get some pitch, that might work. Greek fire if it's available, but have fun getting that if it's not available. Alright, if it's not available, you can get it that way. I mean, you know what I mean? It's probably not available because Greek fire is complicated. You don't have napalm. You don't have a lot of burny stuff. Acid is a similar problem, because you need enough acid to kill it. Now, key point here. Most of the time when depicted, you cut off a troll's head, it's not conscious. Like, it is dead. It's bleh. And then it becomes conscious once its body grows back. So, you could theoretically take a troll head and then scorch the bottom of it with a torch. Because this is kind of the solution to killing a troll, is take large pointy objects, stab it repeatedly until it falls over, then stab it some more, and keep stabbing it and keeping it down while someone builds a giant bonfire nearby, and then you guys stab it and kind of drag it over there and just throw it onto the fire and let it burn that way. That's a legitimate strategy. Is it a great strategy? I mean, you be the judge. I give it a 7 out of 10. It works. It's not the cleanest, but it's fine. Preferably you bring a mage along and then they Hadouken the thing and it explodes and you don't have a problem anymore. Or they just flamethrower it or scorching ray it or flame strike it. You know, insert fire here, make it go away. If that doesn't work because you're an unfortunate person to run into a half-fire elemental troll because your DM hates you, or the gods hate you, depending on what context of this is, acid. Now, of course, you could make one that's immune to both of those, but you're a bad person if you do that, and then if your players then elect to teleport it into space, that's your fault. Just letting you know that. Don't do that, though. That's very unfair. An interesting thought that came to me here. A gun is not actually a good solution to a troll. Hear me out on this one. So, one moment. Thought I'd bring an example out. So, this is my Kar 98, as any of you have been paying attention will know. So this is an 8mm Mauser. Now, an 8mm Mauser is a great gun. It leaves very nice holes. You can kill deer with this. You can kill bears with this. You can... I feel fairly confident hunting most animals with this thing. I mean, you wouldn't go after an elephant or a water buffalo with this, but that's more because water buffalo charge you and you need it to drop immediately, which is why you use obnoxiously oversized guns for it. I would not troll hunt with this. With caveats. There's some yabbits and caveats in here. The yabbit and the caveat is if I'm sniping with it. So I'm 200-300 yards away and I see the troll, and I can line up a headshot and drill him in the head. That'll probably work. In any other context, no. Because this, unless I am using a hollow point, and I might not be able to, frankly. Again, it's trolls. They have very thick hides, generally. Especially if you're fighting a stone troll. If you're fighting a stone troll, this is going to suck. Because you cannot use a hollow point, which will leave nice, big, ripped holes in the sucker. This, standard, just using a standard lead projectile or a full metal jacket round without a hollow point, you're going to leave an 8mm hole in it. That's it. You've left an 8mm hole in the thing. As opposed to however big this is. That's like 3 inches across. Okay, this is leaving a 3-inch hole in the sucker. This is leaving an 8mm hole. Now, if it goes out the other end, and it might actually not, trolls are giant masses of muscle, it could leave a slightly larger hole, but okay, we have an 8mm hole and a 15mm hole on the other end. Cool. Now granted, you are causing organ damage and possibly hydrostatic shock. I mean, trolls aren't mostly water like the rest of us, and there's a lot of liquid in here, so the bullet's shoving that out of the way. How much damage that actually causes is entirely up for debate, and I'm not debating it. I'm just telling you it's a thing that could happen, and maybe it causes more damage to trolls. I don't know. I doubt it, but there it is. So unless you are taking your gun and shooting it in the head, don't really bother unless you're using, you know, a 4-bore or a 2-bore stopping rifle. And if you don't know what that is, go look it up and be amazed at how absolutely ridiculously monstrous these guns are, because they're meant to stop a charging water buffalo. Immediately. Think about that for a moment, and as you do, we shall move on. So, how do you beat trolls if, in a medieval context, except for doing the original strategy I proposed, which is stab the bejesus out of them until they fall over? Because what if they don't fall over? Well, then you have a problem. Particularly in low fantasy settings, which actually Warhammer is a very excellent example of this. I'm going to set this down because this is getting kind of heavy. Just want to make sure. Alright, so Warhammer has matchlock guns and flintlock guns and wheel-lock guns. They got big guns, right? They're big, honking 60, 65 caliber rifles. They're pretty big. The issue is you get one shot. Maybe two. You might pull off two before the troll gets to you. And you could do a fair amount of damage. Now, of course, this depends how fast does the troll regenerate. I'm not going to go into that because I don't know. It's entirely setting dependent. D&D, it's a reasonably brisk pace. They will honestly regenerate an arm in a fairly short period of time. If they can find it, they can just pick the sucker up and they'll slap it. They just literally shove it right back on there, and it'll all reattach in about 6 seconds. Because one round. It's very swift. Regrowing limbs takes a little bit longer, but even then, we're talking regrowing an entire limb, even if it's a couple of days, whoop-de-doo. It's not a big deal for it. It's just going to get that back. As for damage to itself, reasonably quick. I mean, I would assume we're not talking Wolverine speed here. Maybe original Wolverine, who's a little slower, but We're talking, you get stabbed, it gets pulled out, and then it starts sewing itself back together, and probably over the course of, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. So you gotta keep stabbing it. And the problem is, if you're not doing enough damage, say you aren't using a suitably massive weapon, like, this might actually be okay. I mean, in the case that you just keep cutting it, and, you know, you have a bunch of people doing this. The problem is, I am way too close to a troll for my own taste. I don't want to be that close. So spears would be the solution. And then you get nice piercing wounds in it, which will probably stitch up on the outside, but it's got to stitch all the muscle on the inside yet, which is good. If you can hamstring it, that's good. Hit important things. I would assume important things take longer to regenerate. Again, I am presuming. Don't ask me what happens if you get a double lung shot on the thing. I don't know how it keeps moving unless it's slowly asphyxiating. Or trolls don't need to breathe. I don't know, okay? Troll physiology is weird when it gets to this level of regeneration. It's creepy, it's weird, I don't get it. But I understand the effects it has. Most notably the fact that they just don't die. So fire is kind of the solution here. Or sulfuric acid if you happen to have that. Or lava if it's handy. I mean, if you have lava handy, do that. I'm not going to recommend drowning just straight out of the gate. I mean, even if it's a stone troll, I don't know if they breathe. I don't. Because I don't know what happens if they lose both their lungs. I mean, do they just regenerate them fast enough? I don't know. These are the questions that will inform your strategy. So the best strategy is, if you can have a flamethrower, use that. If you can't, big pointy sticks. And then repeated, gang warfare on it. This is why you don't want to engage in against lots of trolls. If there's more than one troll, like we're talking 4 or 5 trolls and you don't have a mage, get a cannon. I think a 6-pound field gun will be fine. That will leave a very nice, monstrous hole in the thing and probably take it out for a while. Because it's got to stitch, a spinal column back together. And ribs. And various organs and things. A lot of important stuff has to get stitched back together. Beyond that, you're not in for a good time if it's the super regenerating trolls. If it's a Middle-earth style troll, well, one of 2 solutions. One, wait till day. If it turns to stone, great, you're done. If it doesn't, giant pointy sticks, cannons, and in this instance, a gun actually will work, because... Anyway, drop the crap. A gun will work because it's just got a thick hide. I mean, maybe you want something a little bigger than an 8mm, but I'd probably go shoot an log hide with this. Probably work out fine. Probably. I mean, it has the advantage of me not being near it. Beyond that, though, that's about it. Trolls are wonderfully straightforward. Because they're going to run up to you, pick you up, and bite your head off. Because that's what they do. Brutal simplicity in its finest. Unless, of course, they have other mystical abilities because of various magical experimentation. Please don't do that. To any evil mages out there, please, for the love of God, don't do that. They're inevitably going to turn against you and eat you, and then the rest of us have to deal with it, so please don't do that. So yeah, trolls. They suck. They suck to deal with. They're big, they're menacing, they have giant claws, they have giant teeth, they regenerate, and most people can't solve the problem with trolls because who's carrying around pockets full of napalm? Or sulfuric acid, for that matter. I mean, neither of those are common things that people are going to have. Firebombs, even. You need it to sustain long enough to burn through it, so a giant bonfire is kind of your solution. So, yeah, if you have access to Molotovs, Molotovs. You have access to napalm, napalm. You have access to a 2-bore stopping rifle, do that! That sounds like a good time. You have access to cannons, even better. But yeah, trolls. I would give them a 9 out of 10 on the do not want to face list. Anyway, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below.